On today's episode of Talk Legal to Me, we have Raees Mohamed, who is the founder of R.M. Warner Law. He's here talking all things defamation. He's also talking about his mass social media presence. He talks a lot about celebrity cases that are trending in the news right now and an Arizona case that's very high profile. Stay tuned. Welcome, Raees.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming on. I want to dive right in. Tell me about your law firm, R.M. Warner.
So R.M. Warner, we're based in Scottsdale.
Okay.
We have a nationwide practice, actually. So our primary area of practice is internet defamation. So we're the guys who chase people that harass people online, maybe leak their nudes online, they're defaming them, they're disparaging their business, fake reviews. We deal with all that and all the related legal issues. And then we have a more sort of traditional corporate practice where we represent entrepreneurs in a variety of different industries. And so that might include some commercial transactional work as well as commercial disputes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How did you get into this area of law? Because it is so niche and it's not the family law, the criminal law, the PI lawyer. How did you know you wanted to do this?
So you might remember, 2009 was like the armpit of the legal market, right?
Yeah.
We were graduating law school.
Sure.
And I had offers to do bankruptcy work, right?
Okay.
And I don't know about you, but bankruptcy is not very sexy. It doesn't keep me up. It doesn't keep me interested. It's very bland. So when I finished law school, so I graduated in 2009, I hung my own practice like immediately after getting licensed. And I was always interested in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And I loved the internet. And it was something about, Facebook and Amazon was booming at that time. And I said, no one's representing people who are offering services or products on those platforms. I know a little bit about how the internet works, and I love entrepreneurship. I have a business degree. Let me just jump into this. And I knew how to do like 3 things coming out of law school from clinics that I had taken.
Okay.
So with a little bit of mentorship, I just picked my area, which was I'm going to represent entrepreneurs and people doing things on the internet. Okay. That's really how it happened, and it grew legs from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really grown legs from there because I'm seeing you all over. You have such a strong social presence. Talk about that. Talk about how you've grown that and the things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of growth, it's been organic. I believe that everything we do as a firm at R.M. Warner, it's like slow growth. It's, at the right pace. I think things that happen too fast, sometimes they fall very quickly as well.
Sure.
So it's kind of like a quality over quantity thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of like personal brand growth, I think I committed to this last year where many people were like, you need to put yourself out there more, shoot more videos, do more content. And I said, fine, let's commit to this. Let's not make it a New Year's resolution. Just start doing it.
Right.
And so it was literally open my phone, 1, 2, 3, let's go. And I've learned a lot. I'm still learning.
Okay.
But I think, it's just talking to people, having these conversations about the issues we see.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about, fortunately.
Yeah.
So that's sort of helped me in my progress and my personal growth. And the biggest thing is, for running your own law firm is the time.
Sure.
You have to take the time out.
Yeah.
And that's really the only thing that is the main hurdle. There's plenty to talk about.
Right.
It's really a time commitment.
Yeah, lawyers can talk all day. So.
That's right. That's right.
And so how do you balance that time? Because you're running a practice that's booming and growing and scaling, and then you're doing all of these appearances and content and everything. How do you carve the time out?
I think balance is a word that's relative to
Sure.
everyone.
Okay.
Like when people say balance, I think of a tightrope walker, with a gigantic pole walking really slow.
Right.
Nothing about my practice would be described as that. It's very fast paced. It's
Right.
very risky. And so balance to me means doing the important things, making sure there's time for that and you commit time to that, and everything else falls into place.
Right.
And so I'm spending a lot of time thinking about, strategizing about content. I get a lot of invitations to do podcasts. Some of them I turn down.
Okay.
But it's really about making time to do it and then figuring out, where to squeeze everything else. Something has to give usually, right?
Yeah, for sure, sure. Sometimes I feel like it's our personal time that gives because we're just trying to pour into everybody else and everything that we're trying to do, our clients, our firm, our teams. What's kind of something that you like to do on your personal time to just get relaxation and stay sane?
Yeah, so relaxation and stay sane, that's a good question. To the extent you could describe me as sane, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure I would.
I would say I'm a big health nut.
Okay.
I believe in, mental health, taking care of yourself physically and mentally.
Sure.
So meditation is huge for me. The gym is huge for me. When I miss those things, my day's incomplete. Like I really feel it.
Yeah.
It's not just about, it's the process. I miss that process. So I dedicate time for fitness, physical and mental fitness. And then, of course, I have all kinds of hobbies. I love to paint and draw.
Oh, that's cool.
You may know this, but I played in a punk rock band many years ago. So I played guitar. I've played guitar for a long time, 25 years now.
Dang.
And so that's a hobby at home that I just like to, it's a nice stress reliever.
Okay.
So those are things, I love to travel.
Okay.
I was in Dubai for 2 weeks recently.
Wow. Yeah. Was that for fun, or for work?
Yeah, it was a little bit of fun and work.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
We're trying to expand. I don't know if you heard, but the King of Dubai is building a content palace, if you will, like a content creators hub, spending $50 million to build it.
Wow.
And fund all these creators, basically create a massive creator space.
Sure.
So I got to thinking, well, we represent creators.
Yeah.
Like in my firm. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And if you're selling to the Americas and you're in the Middle East, we could be your go-to.
Yeah.
Right? So I went to kind of explore that, meet some creators and kind of see what the climate is to do business.
Yeah.
And people are so welcoming. So
that's
maybe
cool.
there'll be an RM Warner Dubai in a year or so. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
I love that. I saw your posts that you were there, and I thought, oh yeah, you're just having a good time. But you're like business focused and.
Yeah, I do mix business and pleasure. People say don't. I do. I think it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like sometimes I feel guilty if I take some time personally, but if I can throw some business in there, I feel like I'm still being productive and things aren't just stopping.
I think when people think of lawyers, they think of us as like robots who just can sit at a desk for 15 hours or stand in court for 15 hours and just churn through things.
Sure.
I think many people don't understand what it is to be, what the human aspect is of being a lawyer. And you take hits for your client.
Oh yeah.
You take slaps from judges, from opposing counsels. Sometimes your bills don't get paid or paid on time.
Yep.
There's the emotions of winning and losing.
Yeah.
Nobody wins every case. You know that. Every lawyer knows that. And so what are you doing to keep yourself sane? The question you asked is the most important question if you're a practicing lawyer.
Yeah.
It's like the first question you should ask yourself if you're a busy lawyer.
Yeah.
Some lawyers, may work 3-4 hours a day or they're part-time. They're not really into it. But people who own practices and they're growing like you and I think it's easily overlooked to not take care of yourself.
I think so. I think people think that they could just keep it going so full throttle, but at some point something's going to give. So I'm with you. The balance, really taking that time to take care of yourself. That way you can take care of what you need to take care of, because we're not robots. We can't just keep going. It's such an emotional job, profession, like you said,
I feel like half the time we're playing therapist with our client.
For sure.
And walking them through the pitfalls. I mean, it exists in injury. It exists in the work that we do.
Yeah.
Where you have to play that role to some degree.
Sure.
Right? And life circumstances. And then now you flip the switch into, okay, how does this translate into a legal solution to the problem you have?
Yep.
But it takes a lot out of you.
It does take a lot out of you. Sometimes I feel like maybe I didn't do as much work that day, but for some reason I'm still feeling drained, and then I forget there is that emotional component where you're trying to understand someone and be compassionate and make sure that they feel you should be trusted and that you've got their back. How do you build that trust with your clients? Because it's really important in your line of work. I think
it is, especially with internet defamation.
Sure.
It's very, very personal. There's nothing more personal than your reputation.
Yeah.
When somebody goes after you, goes on a national campaign or starts a podcast or makes you a target.
Sure.
It's very, very, it's visceral.
Yeah.
It's very similar to getting injured in that respect, right?
For sure.
Although most injuries are not personal in the sense of nobody deliberately hits you with the car, hopefully.
Yeah.
But getting attacked on the internet is very, very visceral. It really messes with your mind. So that also falls onto my shoulders to help my clients walk them through the trauma of what they have to do and what the solutions are from a legal sense.
Right.
But I think, to get to your question of like, how do we deal with clients and build a rapport to let them trust us? I think it's being authentic.
Yeah.
We turn down a lot of cases.
Okay.
And clients sometimes get upset.
Right.
Like, why is my case not worthy enough?
Right.
And so, we charge for consultations, because if we didn't, we would just sit on the phone all day.
Yeah.
So there is a natural weeding out process. And sometimes that's like, you know what, there's not enough here for us to do something. Or we know immediately that it's a losing case just on the optics of things. And so why pay me a fee to tell you that? And so we'll politely decline and maybe tell you specifically why. And I think from the start, that's building rapport.
Yep.
And we're not perfect, but delivering the authenticity that we care about your case. We're also experts in what we do.
Sure.
We don't have to sell that to the client, and the decision is up to them. And it just being real on costs. I mean, unlike injury, like you're coming out of pocket from day one with us.
Yeah.
We're billing hourly, or it's flat fee, or there's retainers.
Sure.
So I think being upfront about those things, clients appreciate most of the time.
Yep.
And then it becomes about, then it's about who Raees is, or who my partner Dan, or who Mike is, or who, everybody else in my firm. Who are we, and how can we help you in that journey to resolve whatever internet related or business dispute you have?
That's really good. I think that clients really appreciate transparency and honesty, because like oftentimes maybe this happened to them for the first time. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what this is going to cost. And like you just being upfront with them and letting them know all of those pieces gives them a little bit more comfort to kind of know what to expect in a situation that is very unexpected.
And to emphasize this too, we're living in the age of like fake internet influencers and fake coaches and people that sell like glamour and glitz online.
Sure.
And they walk into our firm and they have this feeling of like, we feel it's a safe zone. They can tell us about their problem, how they were cheated, what they were scammed out of, what happened. But we see it every day with people just projecting a lifestyle of affluence, even lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Who don't even practice law.
Yeah.
Or they're just generating leads and saying like, we're the best in the industry. I'm like, when's the last time you touched a case? Really, when's the last time you talked to a client?
Right.
So you personally as a lawyer can't be the best at what you do.
Sure.
Maybe you have people behind you that support you, but just being transparent.
Yeah, you're so right about that. I remember like when the curtain was kind of like pulled over and like Oz was exposed, like kind of when Instagram started becoming big with lawyers, like in 2021, I was at a conference and it was just like prominent attorney that was on social media and they were like, oh, you practice in Arizona? Like I want to send you cases. And like, well, don't you like do the cases? Don't you practice? Don't you have your own law firm? And they're like, no, like I'm just a lead generator. And that was really like my first glimpse that, oh, okay, so just because they're advertising that they are lawyers and all this, they're not necessarily handling the case. And obviously several years have passed now and we see tons of that.
Yeah.
Talk about like the fake news of like social media and like what your thoughts are on it and how that's problematic.
Yeah, we could talk for days on that topic. I mean,
sure.
So, a core part of our practice oftentimes deals with people who have suffered a loss at the hands of some scammer.
Okay.
And or they're being targeted by these scammers in some sort of adverse PR campaign.
Okay.
So there's 2 or 3 gigantic takeaways from this, and we'll start with the conclusions. Mm-hmm. The first thing is you never believe at face value almost anything you hear or see on social media.
Sure.
It's all procured.
Yeah.
It's all very production based. There's a spin. There's glitz and glamour. It's being done to convince you of something. Not everything's an honest like conversation like we're having. Like it's very production based. When people first got Instagram, it was let's put pictures of your cat.
Yeah.
And so the idea quickly evolved into where it is today, where it's very, very overproduced and we have a Trojan horse behind everything.
Yeah.
And people still don't understand that it's all production.
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
It's not the original concept of this is me and my cat. Sure. And we spend a lot of time educating people like, well, what made you buy into this program where you invest $100,000 and make passive income on Amazon stores or on these OnlyFans agencies or, I've had clients that are scammed out of these things.
Wow.
And they're multi-million-dollar scams year over year. Like what? And they tell me their stories and it's mind-boggling, right? And a lot of people say, well, you must be dumb if you get duped. And I say, well, not really, because something in that process made them vulnerable to something.
Sure.
And we're all vulnerable to being convinced of
Right.
things, right?
Right.
We've all fallen, if you will, for something. And so it's just crazy for me, having seen the guts of the internet explode, and for 15 years doing this, and I can look at it and say, next time come to me, to
Before.
help you do some diligence
Sure.
on the legal side before you buy into this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just, number one thing is like, there's a lot of glitz and glamour, and very little of it is authentic.
Right.
It's hard to know who real people are if you find them online, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to know.
For sure.
Second thing is, the fake news angle of things, which when we say fake news, it's not just like political news and world news, but also news about people.
Right.
Like just yesterday, this video of Drake throwing his orange slipper at the drone. Did you see that?
I saw that. I'm like, this has to be AI.
So what
is
I'm
it?
reading about it is it was not somebody actually filming Drake with the drone inadvertently and like invading his privacy kind of thing.
Sure.
But it was a setup by Drake to promote this gambling thing that he's now endorsing.
Oh, I gotcha.
Now, I don't know what's true or not.
Right.
But that's an interesting kind of
Spin.
perspective on it,
Yeah.
right? Like it could be.
Yeah.
People do those things where they sort of bag a marketing play
Sure.
and they throw it out there. They're like, oh, you would never think of that. You and I would never think like that.
Yeah.
But somebody who's in marketing will think like that
Sure. And make it go like viral.
and make it go viral. And
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, dang, like I would think his throw with the slipper is a little bit better than
Right.
what it ended up being.
well, I think Drake knows a thing or two about maintaining his privacy
yeah,
also.
for sure. Yeah. I'm
and-
like, what?
Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't doing anything in his patio on his laptop that he wouldn't want the world to see.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, very interesting how you
Yeah.
believe like it's curated and it's spun that way.
For sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
interesting. What about some celebrity case? So you're like the guru now when it comes to celebrity cases,
Yeah.
and there's like a verdict, like ASAP Rocky, and he's not found guilty.
Yeah.
Boom, I'm going to your page, I'm looking. You're already in my feed. You're already talking about it and filming. Tell me about some of the celebrity cases that you're tracking, you've studied, and that you find super intriguing.
Yeah, hats off to my marketing team for putting me like to the task of saying, record this now.
Yeah,
Like
they're
put that
good.
document down and cover this right now. It's timely. So I think as lawyers, we learn the analysis of a case, right?
Right.
Whether it's criminal or it's civil.
Sure.
We know to look for certain facts. There's elements of cases, right? It's from day one of law school. Here are the three prongs.
Yeah.
Show me how you satisfy. That's how we think.
Yeah.
Most people aren't trained to think like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just hear a story and they make their decision on who is saying it,
Okay.
not what is being said.
Sure.
You catch me?
Sure.
So a story comes out, it's on TMZ or True Crime, whatever podcast or news outlet, and they're looking at who is talking.
Mm-hmm.
And, is it a prosecutor who's very famous and looks really nice and is getting all this airtime saying, all we need to know is whether that prop gun was yours or not, and we have a guaranteed guilty verdict. And it's getting headlines, and again, news is procured, right?
Yeah.
It's or are we saying, well, hold on a second, time out. Let's actually read the criminal complaint. Let's listen to what evidence was presented on direct and cross,
Yeah.
and maybe come to a conclusion.
Sure.
And on that particular ASAP Rocky case is interesting because there was never, ever true evidence. When I say true, like the weight of the evidence just didn't support that any crime even happened.
Right.
And yet the guy was facing up to 24 years in prison.
Wild.
That's crazy. It's a trial. It's a multi-week trial.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think this is a case. This is clearly not a case of corrupt defense lawyers are destroying evidence. In fact, you could say the opposite about
Sure.
prosecutors in this case.
Yeah.
It's like 2 days before it was presented at trial, like these facts are coming out. There's this issue of the casings, right? So I don't know if you're aware of this, like
Yep.
the shell casings of a gun were not at the scene
Right.
the day it happened, the instant it happened. They were produced later
Right.
by, Mr. Injured guy, ASAP Relly. And apparently they allegedly matched the 9mm that
Sure.
ASAP shot. And defense did an amazing job cross-examining. Like, you did in fact shoot these shells out of a gun kind of thing.
Right.
This is poking holes in prosecutors' defense.
Yeah, defense counsel was good on that
He
one.
was impeccable. And that case is also interesting because there was multiple times in the trial where the judge had to warn the lawyers
saw that.
to shut the F up. Like, do not, the instruction was given, do not talk to each other unless it's officially on the record, which means like if it's a valid objection or you have a question, because they were like at each other's throats.
I saw that.
It was very personal.
Like so spicy.
Yeah, it was very spicy.
And with the defense counsel, doing a great job, I think the couple said, like, we have a third baby, we're naming it after our defense attorney.
I mean, the guy got off of like, he was offered,
years.
a guilty plea multiple times.
Sure.
And this is, as lawyers, I know you've been in the criminal side before, right?
Yeah.
And I think we do what we do to support the advancement of justice in our respective fields.
Sure.
Like, there's something to be said about the cause and supporting somebody who's in the right and doing the right thing.
Right.
As they say.
That's right.
And I think watching this as entertainment, you lose sight of that.
Yeah, you're right about that.
You lose sight of the fact that, guys, somebody might go to jail or pay a ton of money in a civil settlement, or something might happen, a judgment might be entered, and it could be wrong or premised on falsities.
Sure.
And a lot of these celebrity cases, like Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, same situation.
Oh my gosh, amazing case.
Now we have Blake Lively, right?
Yes.
And there's always these celebrity cases, and I tell people, look, the public optics and commentary impacts the public's perception.
It does, and then can taint the jury pool too.
It could taint the jury pool, and usually in these celebrity cases, particularly on the civil side, because they're a lot longer, right? You don't have the concept of a speedy trial.
Right.
It could go on for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
The judges warned the lawyers not to make statements about their cases, particularly in defamation cases.
Sure.
Defamation cases, what people don't understand is from day one, truth, falsity, or opinion matters.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
In a breach of contract case, there's some gray area, right? Somebody might argue, well, we were mistaken on the interpretation.
Right.
I thought this, you thought that, we're going to sue, somebody's going to owe money.
Right.
In defamation, it's different. It's words that are spoken that millions of people heard that injured you.
Right.
And the defense is always going to say, that statement was true, or it was an opinion, and I'm going to prove it. And the burden's always on the plaintiff to prove that it was false.
Right.
So even what you allege in a complaint in a defamation case is always scrutinized extremely heavily.
Sure.
Imagine by the time it gets to trial.
Years later.
Right. And people have a perception, if it's a jury trial, of who's telling the truth.
Right.
And what people interpreted the public statements to mean, which is relevant in a defamation case.
Sure.
So it's scary trying to litigate those things.
Yeah.
That's why so many defamation cases don't go to trial, by the way.
Okay.
Because there's a tremendous amount of risk. Like, by the time we get out there and this thing's been out floating around, who knows what somebody's going to think of my statements.
Right.
It could go either way.
It's been there for a long time.
It's been there a long
sat
time.
in the public's hands and opinions for such a long time.
Yeah, social media commentary. People make a living out of making commentary on celebrity cases, right?
They really do.
And they should, as they should. It's a matter of public concern. They're huge public figures. It's entertaining.
Right.
It's newsworthy. They're entitled to, right? First Amendment. Talk about it. It's all good.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. What about the Diddy case? Like, how come we're not hearing anything really popping up with what's going on with that? I wanted to pick your brain on that.
So the latest thing, I was supposed to actually cover this yesterday, so I'll give you a preview. But you've heard that there was a dismissal.
Yes, I heard that.
And so here's another case where Busby, and I'm not trying to single him out, but he's representing victims.
Right.
Huge PR campaign.
Okay.
Purposefully or not. I don't know his intentions behind it, but he's been in the news a lot.
Sure.
Giving direct quotes a lot.
Right.
Saying, we've got victims, we're going to prove it. Meanwhile, Diddy's lawyers are sending sanctions letters, and this is, bullshit. We're going to tear you a new one, and this.
Yeah.
And then the first one is getting dismissed.
Right.
And so what do I think about it? There's two things that public has to remember. The attorney-client relationship is confidential. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
Maybe it got dismissed and that person is going to a different lawyer.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe the lawyer discovered an impropriety in their client's case, and we can't talk about that.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't go public and say, my client lied, I'm withdrawing my case. You can't, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
Lay people don't understand that. Like, even if we're getting out of a case for an ethical issue, we can't even tell the judge what the issue was in the case.
Right.
We're not allowed to because confidentiality prohibits it.
Sure.
These are things that like the public is not thinking about.
Yeah.
So it's automatically a sexy story.
Yeah.
There's something nefarious. We don't know.
Yeah,
the bottom line is we don't know. The only time we might know is if we hear that there was a resolution.
Okay.
Like if a few days from now we hear like the case was dismissed, but that plaintiff and Diddy's team settled.
Right.
And even then, you don't know on what terms.
Sure, we don't.
Was it $1? Was it $10 million? Was it in exchange for something that's on these tapes?
Yep. You never know.
You just
it's
don't know.
It's all confidential.
It's confidential.
Yeah, there is a lot of celebrity stuff that's popping up, I feel like, in recent years.
Yeah, a ton. And
Just...
this is the other thing about people who do entertainment or defamation law, and they represent people that are in the public's eye, is all it takes is one news article. One news article, and it can change the trajectory of the case for better or for worse.
Right.
I personally don't talk about like my cases. I don't get on TV or on the news to talk about my cases. I talk about other people's cases.
Sure.
At least during the duration of the actual case.
Okay.
For that reason, because it's too risky.
Right.
And so I when clients come to me asking, other lawyers, and I represent a lot of lawyers, right?
Sure.
Sometimes it's about PR issues, and they say, I want to go to the press about this issue, and my usual answer is don't.
Okay.
It's wait it out.
Okay.
Wait it out and do it at the conclusion of your case. Or if you do it, these are the things that you should say and shouldn't say.
Okay, that's good.
And I think the reason for that is, number one, lawyers have liability.
Yeah.
There's no privilege protecting statements to the press,
typically.
Unless you're just reading from a complaint.
Sure.
And number two, it could screw up your client's case.
Yeah.
Right?
It's risky.
It's very risky. So I think a lot of lawyers do it. Again, celebrity cases, it happens a lot.
It does.
It happened in Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. It's happening in Blake Lively's case right now.
Yeah.
Diddy's case. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, we had the TMZ special where he's talking about the Costco and all the things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get off TMZ. Like, why are you doing this?
It's crazy.
But yeah, it's probably better that they just wait it out and like save the statement for the end.
Yeah.
And they hopefully win.
Or high level general statements like, we believe in our client's case.
Yep.
We're on the right side of this, and we're in for the fight. General things.
Right.
Don't litigate your case on social media.
Sure. I think a lot of attorneys are trying to do that. I don't know if they think it's going to like persuade or how they're using it maybe tactically, or they're just being like egomaniacs and want to hear themselves talk. I don't know, but I see it a lot.
I think many of them think it's going to garner more press and give them more cases.
Oh, okay.
That's
true,
what
true.
I think.
Very, very true. Yeah.
Now, I mean, look, a guy like, I forgot Taco Pina. I forgot his name. He has an amazing last name. The lawyer for P. Diddy, or for A$AP Rocky.
Yeah.
But this guy did an amazing job for his client.
Yeah.
He was fierce. He believed in the defense.
Yeah.
He asked all the right questions on cross-examination.
Sure.
And it was a public trial.
Yeah.
He didn't have to make statements to the press. It's being recorded and played all over the place.
Right.
But he did such a good job for his client that's the best advertisement.
Right. He doesn't need to throw up a billboard for that.
Yeah.
Just, talk about your
That's it.
work. Yeah, exactly.
That's it. The lawyers for Johnny Depp, there was how many week trial?
Oh my
4 or
gosh.
5 weeks? And cameras in there filming every second.
Yep.
Look at Camille Vasquez. She's like a rock star.
Yeah, she was like a fan favorite. Yeah.
And it's because she did an impeccable job.
Sure.
And she didn't have to talk to the press. In fact, she's a great example of someone who said, I'm not talking to y'all until this case is done.
Yep.
And then she went on TV shows and stuff.
Yep. And people still loved her. And she still had a fan following, She'd get out of the car in the morning, walk into the courtroom, and people just were loving what she was doing in that case.
That's
and
right.
Even waiting at the end didn't matter. She still had the public's favor.
100%. I think a critical takeaway from all this is the public never really knows what the truth is.
Sure.
There's so many layers to what you're watching on social media.
Right.
Whether it's about a celebrity case or about somebody that you're reading or watching.
Right.
How many times have you been in a courtroom and you're like, this is absolutely prosecutorial abuse?
Yeah.
Or the other side, the defense absolutely destroyed evidence.
Yep.
This is a lie.
Sure.
But it gets out there and people believe it, and rarely is that accurate or true.
Right. There's so many layers that people don't know to stories. And kind of working, in the public sector and seeing how people spin, or the media spins things, or just takes like a soundbite.
That's right.
And runs with it.
It's
like,
all sound bites.
Yeah, if they only knew the full truth.
It's a headline. Everything's a headline.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. No, your work has been so great. I love watching you and following you. Talk to me a little bit about, you're featured on a podcast. You've not been a guest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But you've been featured.
I think I know what podcast you're talking about.
You've been featured on a podcast quite a bit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, like, have you listened to these episodes? I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
To me, it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Okay.
This particular podcast we're talking about.
Because your name's mispronounced, or?
Which is deliberate.
Sure.
It's like this. When there's a clown show happening, people like to watch it because it's a clown show. Sure. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
Nobody's cheering for the clowns.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't cheer. We're laughing at clowns.
Right.
And that's how I feel.
Okay.
You could talk about me. I get it. I'm hired to take cases that a lot of lawyers don't have the guts to take or don't have the cerebral cortex to handle.
Sure.
That's just a fact.
Damn, that's a great soundbite.
And I'm more, and this goes for, I'm not just talking about me, everybody in my firm.
Sure.
And the lawyers we work with. We co-counsel on cases too, right? We bring in, other law firms will bring us in. And as I said, I represent a lot of lawyers. To me, if you want to act like a clown on a podcast talking about your case when you are a defendant, the judge, the jury will get to hear it. I don't need to say anything.
Right.
I don't even like to hear it. I hear it because it's discoverable and it's being produced on a Bates log in my case. Fortunately, I have thick skin. I've been doing this for 15 years. This is not my first rodeo.
Right.
But people who are, there's a certain personality trait that tend to do these kinds of things.
Okay.
And, in other cases that I've seen, the personality it's always narcissistic, egotistical type of people who want to hear themselves speak and want everything to be about them, who do these kinds of things.
Okay.
That's my professional opinion.
Right.
Based on my experience for 15 years.
Right.
So if you want to make a podcast about me, and Gordi, if you want to make a podcast about me, go ahead.
No, you're
more
my friend.
power to you. But it's truly a clown show. That's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is wild. Here's the other thing. For lawyers, I've said this before, it's a privilege to practice law.
Sure.
We have to apply to the bar, right? Another thing clients don't oftentimes understand. It's not just going to a accredited law school, taking the bar exam, but you have to pass character and fitness. Are you fit to represent the interests of XYZ person? Sure. Are you going to take advantage of them? Are you going to steal their money? Are you going to take it from a trust account? Are you going to abuse their trust?
Right.
Or are you going to do the right thing? That's ethics and character. So it turns out character matters as a lawyer.
Right.
Right? And so what does it say about your character when you do things like this?
I think it's a rhetorical question.
In other professions, like when doctors, and I represent a lot of doctors who get into spats with other doctors online.
Sure.
And sometimes we find out it's a competitor. Believe it or not, plastic surgeons do this. Dentists do this a lot. There's two common categories of MDs who develop, hatred towards their peers, and they do these covert operations to damage their professional reputation, starting with false reviews.
Right.
You see it with them too, and it's usually narcissistic, egotistical, plastic surgeon who just can't stand seeing somebody be successful, who can't stand seeing that somebody's better than them legitimately, has a better practice, has better reputation, does higher quality level surgery, and they go out and they set on a path to do some covert, and I really mean covert, like you wouldn't know some competitors behind it.
Wow.
Hire influencers, hire marketing people, and go in the trenches to make the other guy look dirty. And we litigate these cases.
Sure.
Comes out in discovery. And you depose them, and it comes out. The vitriol comes out.
Right.
You can see it.
Right.
We do these depositions. You do them on camera, right?
Yeah.
We're recording the witness, and you watch it later. Or your client watches, and you're like, man, you can feel the vitriol.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't
heavy.
This isn't somebody who was wronged. This is somebody who's crazy.
Right.
Right. And so these covert. This goes back to social media and online presence. you don't know what their intentions are and what is behind the sort of window dressing or in the Trojan horse of what you're seeing. You just never know.
You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening in our city, in our state.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of lawyers are talking about it.
Yeah.
They're like, what is this? They're listening to the podcast. They're hearing all these allegations, accusations, and everything. It just seems like it's getting muddy, and like more personal than like really anything legal necessarily.
It's interesting. As lawyers, we represent our clients' interests. It's not personal to us.
Sure.
The other side can make it personal.
Right.
Defendants can make it personal.
Right.
And that's not something I'm not used to.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have to question if somebody on the other side, a party, is feeling very personal about something, what's going on in their head?
Sure.
Right?
Right.
I represent somebody who was wronged. That's what plaintiffs' lawyers do. Why is it personal to you? Why is it so personal to you?
Right.
Let's answer that question. So, and I tell this to my clients who sit across the table from me and say, this person's saying this about me, this is not true, this is, a smear campaign. And I say, well, let's stop and think about why this person's doing that. What happened? And you hear the story, and I try to take only those cases that have a cause where somebody's truly being harassed or their reputation is being targeted wrongfully.
Right.
Right? Like truth is a defense, right, to defamation.
Right, absolutely.
So going back to, a podcast, and people have commented to me, lawyers that I don't know, saying, we know who this defendant is and best of luck in your case kind of thing.
Wow. Okay.
And we're talking generically because for the same reasons I told you, like I don't talk about my cases and
Right.
But the topic of just being the topic of a podcast.
Right.
It's interesting because it's the same dynamic I represent my clients in. They're a topic of multiple campaigns, hate campaigns, YouTube videos, and hours. I've had clients that were on documentaries that were false.
Wow.
Yeah, that they sold to Netflix or sold to Amazon.
Wow.
And the question is now, how do you walk back that false light that you were put in? The damage is done.
Sure.
I've had clients who were surgeons wrongfully accused in international headlines of doing like a botched surgery.
Wow.
Then you read the medical records and then you talk to the doctor or you resolve the case and as a lawyer, it was all just a hate campaign.
Wow.
It was all, sometimes it's mixed. It's a mixed bag. There's some truth to things that you read online.
Sure.
My favorite thing to tell people about is quotes.
Okay.
You're saying, well, how can a quote be a lie? Well, a quote can be severely taken out of context.
Sure.
And usually what you don't have when there's a negative PR campaign and somebody's quoted like, oh, Gordi said this, look, we have her quotes, is what was the question that was asked?
Right.
What was the context of this conversation? Was it her having cigars on a weekend?
Right.
Or at a bachelorette party? Or like, was this in the courtroom?
Right. It's very different.
Let's understand, and in defamation, context matters.
Sure.
It's actually something that courts are supposed to consider when you look at fact and opinion. So in day-to-day, again, like lay people don't know to view social media and YouTube content, et cetera, in context.
Right.
Right? So we just have to be wary of it.
Yeah, you just have to be mindful of it.
Yeah.
And just kind of know when you're reading something, like what is the full context of it? What are they doing? What are they being asked about? And where is it coming from?
That's right.
Yeah, well, really interesting. Any other comments that you want to share about the topic or?
I would just say this, right? Generally speaking, that many people are victims of harassment, defamation, or being portrayed in a false light. The good news is we have a legal system through which you can put that issue through. When lawyers misbehave, it's even worse for them.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Because you are a player in this so-called game, if you will, to compare it to sports, right? You're a player. You're not a spectator. You're in it.
Right.
You understand what's ethical and what's proper. How does it make you look if you're a lawyer just completely out there slandering other lawyers? For what? For your own PR?
Right.
How do you look? To me, I call it a clown show because to me it's comical standing back and looking in and saying, do people who do these things think that they're more credible as lawyers?
That's an interesting question.
Why not talk about your practice? Like you have a podcast, you go on other people's podcasts, you talk about running a law firm,
right?
You know, the difficulties, the challenges, personal injury work, your passion,
right?
Talk about those things.
Sure.
If you were all of a sudden to talk about defense counsel for hours and hours and 50, 60 episodes,
right, it's gonna
we'd
start.
be like, Gordi needs to take some crazy pills.
Yeah, she needs to start talking about something else.
she needs a life or something. Right. But
sure.
That's really the bottom line.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you
Of course.
sharing some of that, because I feel like the people want to know. And
Sure.
I know you can't talk a lot about it, but
Sure.
at least sharing something and your perspective is so insightful. So
Yeah, I mean, look, I wish I could say a lot more, because I certainly want to, but you know,
Yeah.
I want to be respectful to my client and the process.
Right.
And there will be a conclusion, and I think I'll be on the right side of the conclusion. That's all I can really say.
okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell the viewers, if they want to find you,
Sure.
where can they find you?
So Beard Lawyer on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube.
Right.
RM Warner is my firm, and most of our handles are just RM Warner. And yeah, people ask a lot of questions on social media. They send DMs to my personal account or to RM Warner. Mm-hmm. But the best place, like if you have a question and you think you need help, or if you had an issue, internet-related issue, defamation-related issue, is to fill out our contact form on our rmwarnerlaw.com.
Okay.
Because we have a pipeline, it goes through a specific process.
Sure.
And yeah, we try to get back to every single person that inquires.
That's awesome. No, you're doing a lot. I see you a
Thank
lot in social media, online. You've got a huge presence in our community. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure.
I know that we go way back.
Yes.
And it's been cool to see how much you've grown and scaled.
Likewise.
And
Likewise.
yeah.
We've had this
Congratulations.
conversation before about building and growing.
Yeah.
And it's great to watch you now, like 2 or 3 years, later, and see all
Sure.
the great success you've had. So
Yeah.
likewise.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raees.
Of course.
Wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Talk Legal to Me. Remember, you can listen to us everywhere you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple. And if you want to watch along, visit my YouTube channel at Lawyer Gordi. Until next time, stay informed, stay legal, and stay fabulous, besties.